Deepika Nair is a training delivery manager at Amazon Web Services. She delivers high-end training to AWS customers on architecting and developing solutions on AWS. But as far as I know, Deepika is a superwoman with powers to enhance one's knowledge. So I'd like to invite Deepika. Please join me in welcoming Deepika to talk on AWS training and certification, the AWS Certified Developer Track, Upskill Yourself. Welcome, Deepika.
Thank you so much, Vaishnavi. I here. Please confirm if you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So I am going to be sharing my screen, and please do confirm if you can see my screen.
Not yet.
Just a
Not
second,
not
please.
yet, Deepika.
Yeah.
Can you see it now?
Yes, I think it's loading. Yeah, it's visible.
Awesome,
All
awesome.
right.
So, good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to my session, which is called the AWS Certified Developer Track Upskill Yourself. Now, before I get started with talking about certifications and why they are important, let me just give you a brief introduction about myself. Though Vaishnavi has been very, generous and she has introduced me briefly. But let me just tell you a little bit more about myself. So, as you know by now, my name is Deepika. I am a training delivery manager with the AWS training and certification team in India. I have more than 15 years of experience in the IT industry, and my primary skills were on Java and JEE applications, so building distributed applications, and then we moved on to full stack application development. And as the cloud caught on, I started learning on my own, and that's how I ended up with a job in AWS. So it's been around 4 years now since I've been with AWS, and it's been a roller coaster journey, right? It's been a fun roller coaster journey. So as you can see on the screen, I am 6x AWS certified, and I am also a AWS authorized champion instructor. So believe me when I say that I know a thing or two about certifications, right? So those are my coordinates on the screen. So you can get in touch with me if you have any further questions post this session, or you would like to, get yourself acquainted with me. So you can drop me messages on LinkedIn also. Okay, so let's get started with what we are here to talk about. Before I start talking about certifications, I would like to ask you, why certification? Now, if I ask you this question, many of you might say that, okay, Deepika, certifications, I know that if I get certified, it'll help me get a higher salary. Some of you might say that, okay, Deepika, I'm already certified, and I know that this certification helps me add more value to the work that I'm doing. My company is already running workloads on AWS, and I'm able to manage it better, I'm able to troubleshoot it better, and I'm able to maintain it better because I have the knowledge required because of my certification. Many of you might say that, okay, this certification, Deepika, I want to get certified because I know that it's going to open more avenues for me. I'm going to get more options to choose from when it comes to picking up a job and working with a niche technology like cloud, right? And if a few of you may be hiring managers like me, and you would tell me that, okay, my organization is running workloads on AWS, and I know that when I hire people who are certified, the certification is kind of validation that, okay, this person is skilled on AWS services and technologies. So if you give me any of these answers, these are all answers which would be absolutely correct, right? So certifications are industry recognized credentials that basically prove your expertise in the AWS cloud, right? More than 80% of the people identified higher salary as a direct result of the certification that they have acquired. More than 90% of IT leaders who employ AWS certified staff have seen an increase in productivity from employing certified people, right? And 52% of the people who got certified say that their expertise is now more sought after even within their own organizations and their teams. Now that we've talked about why certification, now as I was telling you that I've been a trainer and now I'm managing the training delivery function at AWS. I have handled many trainings where I've enabled our customers on AWS services on running their workloads using the best practices when they're running their workloads on AWS, right? So let me talk about now when I handle these customers, when I have participants in my classrooms, many of them have many questions on certifications, and many of them have misinformation also when it comes to certifications, right? So today I am here to go ahead and answer all those FAQs that I generally get about certifications. And I'm here to talk about what these certifications are and how do you go about preparing for them. And then I'll, in particular, talk about the developer and DevOps engineering certification. Right? So let's get started. As you can see on the screen, these are all the certifications available from AWS. So if I have to talk to you about the different levels of certifications, because there are many people who are just getting started with AWS, they don't have a clue where to start with, and they ask me, okay, Deepika, can you tell me how do I get started? What is the first certification that I should be aiming for? So there are multiple levels of certifications that you have, meant for different roles that people have in their jobs and meant for different skill sets that people have, right? So let me just walk you through this a bit. So at the foundational level, you have the cloud practitioner certificate, which basically introduces you to the services that you have on AWS. It covers a breadth of services but doesn't go very deep into them. So it will not give you implementation level knowledge about these services, but it will give you a good grip on the value that the AWS cloud can actually give you, right? So this is for beginners or people who just want to test the waters before actually going in for an associate level certification or a professional level certification, or people who would like to explain the AWS value to their customers who would be running AWS workloads, right? Then you have the associate level certifications. Now, there are three different associate level certifications: architect. Uh, One is meant for solutions architects, the other one is for sysops administrators, and the third one is specifically focused on developers. The associate level certifications cover a breadth of services, right? So there are many services that are covered in the associate level certifications, but the depth of knowledge that you're required to have on these services is intermediate, right? So you have, for architects who build, who design solutions for the cloud, they can go for the solutions architect certification. For people who are into monitoring and maintaining systems, they can go for sysops administrator. And developers who write code to develop and deploy applications on AWS, they can go for the developer level associate certification. As a next level, you have the professional certifications. So you have the solutions architect professional and you have the DevOps engineer professional. The professional level certifications also have a broad scope. So you need to know a lot of AWS services if you are writing a professional level certification exam. But along with the breadth that they cover, they also go deep into the services that they are talking about. So to write a professional level exam, the recommendation is that you should have around 2 years of comprehensive experience designing, operating, and troubleshooting solutions on the AWS cloud. So for both associate as well as professional level certifications, these are the certifications that I would generally recommend for IT professionals. You can get started with associate and then you can further proceed to the professional level certifications. However, if you ask me that, Deepika, is it compulsory to go for an associate level certification before I go for a pro cert? Absolutely no. There is no written order per se. You can take any certification that you want at any point in time. However, as I said, the professional level certifications are pretty hard to clear. They're not easy. right? So you need to have that kind of hands-on experience before you appear for the professional level exams. Then now some of you might be skilled in certain areas. For example, you might be in a role of a DB administrator in your organization. So it doesn't make sense for you to learn about 50 different AWS services. You would like to learn only about the databases on AWS and go deep into those services. So for people like these who are skilled in a specific area, we have specialty certifications. So we have a number of specialty certifications like the database specialty, security specialty, ML, data analytics, and networking. And recently, a certification on SAP was also added. So, depending on the role you have, depending on the expertise you have with AWS, you can choose the certification that you want to go for. Now that we've looked at all the certifications that are available, let's talk a little bit more about what the actual exams are about, what to expect in these exams, and how do you actually go about writing these exams. So, the general strategy that you should be following when you are writing the exam and when you are preparing for the exam is focus on understanding the concepts, right? So when you are learning services that are there on AWS and you are preparing for the exam, do not memorize things, do not memorize points. That will not help you, for a simple reason that most of the questions that you will have in the exam will be scenario based, which require you to apply the concepts that you have learned. So focus on understanding the concepts, read the question and the answers properly in full. There would be one word somewhere in one of the options given which will completely change the answer, right? So please make sure that you read the entire question and you read all the options given in the answers properly. And there is a way to identify the keywords in the question. So these are the keywords which will basically decide which option is going to be the correct answer that you have for that question, right? So there is a way to identify these keywords when you are actually answering a question. You can spot the distractors. So there would be a few options in the questions which are absolutely wrong, which are just meant to, kind of make you think twice and confuse you a little before you actually choose the correct answer. So you need to spot these distractors and you actually should eliminate them from your list of possible answers. And please do keep track of time, especially if you're writing a professional exam. It's very easy to lose track of time in a professional exam. And it's always better to take a practice exam before you go ahead with the actual exam. The practice exam will tell you exactly how prepared you are to take the actual exam. So practice exams are a great way to actually let you know how prepared you are and if there are any gaps in your preparation. So wait till the end of the session and we have a surprise, we have an offer for you which will be good for you. Okay, so what is going to be this session's focus? So in this session, I'm going to run you through a few sample questions and we would look at the strategy that you would be using to choose a correct answer for those questions, right? So we will identify what are the key aspects, what are the keywords in the question which you should be focusing on in order to arrive at the correct answer. So let's talk about the developer associate exam. Though I am talking about the developer certificate here, developer associate exam here, the general points that I talked about and I will be talking about will apply to almost every certification exam that you ever appear for in AWS, right? So let's talk about the developer certificate exam. So if I talk about the level of this exam, it's an associate level exam. It's a 130 minutes exam where you have 65 questions to answer. These questions are either multiple choice or multi-response questions. The cost of this exam is around 150 US dollars and the practice exam for this exam costs around 20 USD. You can walk into a testing center, a Pearson VUE or PSI testing center, or now you also have the provision for taking the exams at your home through remote proctoring. When I talk about the developer certification exam or any exam for that matter, there are domains in which you are tested for each exam, right? So if I talk about the domains that are covered in the developer certification, these are the 5 domains. So deployment, security, development with AWS, refactoring, and monitoring and troubleshooting. Each of these domains will have certain percentage of weightage in the exam, right? So deployment, for example, has a weightage of around 22%, security 26, development with AWS around 30, refactoring is around 10, and monitoring and troubleshooting is around 12%, right? So each of these domains have certain weightage in the exam. You will be scored on a score of around 1000, and you have to get a score of 720 and more to actually pass the exam. It's not necessary to get that passing score in each of the domain. You need to get 720 or more in everything combined, right? A total score of 720 or more out of 1000 is what is required. Okay, now let's look at a few questions just to help you understand how do you go about understanding the questions, how do you pick up the keywords, and how do you go about actually answering these questions, right? So let me just walk you through a few questions. So the first domain that we are talking about here is deployment. Every domain that is covered in the examination will have certain certification objectives. So these are the certification objectives for the deployment domain, right? So you basically, you will be tested on using the CI/CD pipelines, processes, and patterns. You'll be tested on a service called Beanstalk. You will be tested on how to deploy application packages on AWS and how to deploy serverless applications, right? So here goes the first question, and I'm reading it for you. You can try to answer it along with me. Which of the following AWS services allows you to automate your build, test, and release process every time there is a code change? So if you look at the options here from the question, first of all, if you look at the question, what are the keywords in the question? You want to automate your build, test, and release process. So once you identify these keywords, it's easy for you to pick up the correct answer, right? So if you want to automate build, test, and the release process on AWS, code pipeline on AWS is the service which will allow you to do that, right? Let's move on to the next one. Which of the following are valid sections in a cloud formation template? Now, here I'm assuming that since this is the AWS user group, I'm assuming that most of you would be familiar with these services, right? So you can try answering these questions here. Which of the following are valid sections in a cloud formation template? So if you know the anatomy of a cloud formation template, it's pretty simple to answer. You can just eliminate the wrong ones. So I can very clearly see that services and declarations is the wrong one, and the correct answer here is going to be parameters, outputs, and resources. Here's another one for you. How can you deploy a Lambda serverless application? So the keywords in this question is you want to deploy a serverless application, a Lambda serverless application, right? So basically, there are 3 answers to be chosen. It's easy to go ahead and eliminate the wrong one. We know that code commit is not a deployment service. So the rest of the 3 are going to be the correct answer for this question. I'm hoping all of you are having fun trying to answer these questions. Let's move on to the next domain now. So domain 2 talks about security, right? So like I said, every domain has certification objectives. So the objectives for this domain are that you have to make, you'll be tested on how to make authenticated calls to AWS, how to implement encryption on AWS, and how to implement application authentication and authorization. So here goes the first question. In AWS, which security aspects are the customer's responsibility? And again, out of the 6 options given here, you're being asked to choose 4, right? So first of all, the keywords in this question is customer responsibility. And since we are to choose 4 answers, it's easy to eliminate the wrong ones. Now, this question, those of you who are familiar with the basics of security on AWS would know that this is a question on the shared responsibility model, right? So in case of shared responsibility model, generally anything that has to do with the physical infrastructure would be AWS responsibility. AWS maintains the physical infrastructure for you, right? So here, as you can see, controlling the physical access to compute resources and decommissioning storage devices is going to be AWS responsibilities. They are not customer responsibilities. So we straight away go and eliminate these two wrong options, and we arrive at the four correct ones. Setting up the life cycle of IAM credentials, using security groups and knuckles or access control lists, using elastic encrypting block store volumes, EBS volumes, and managing the patching of instances are all customer responsibilities. Here's another one for you. You created a message queuing application with Amazon SQS and enabled server side encryption to encrypt the message body while exchanging sensitive data. Which service will allow you to manage and rotate your encryption keys? Now, if you look at the keywords for this particular question, they are going to be you have to manage and rotate your encryption keys centrally. And we know that the service on AWS which lets you manage your encryption keys is basically the KMS, AWS KMS, AWS Key Management Service. Okay, let's similarly move on to domain 3 now. So we are talking about development with AWS. This is one of the most, important domains in this exam because it has more weightage than the other domains. So you will be tested on a lot of things in this particular domain. So you need to know how to write code for serverless applications. You need to be able to translate your functional requirements into application design. You'll be tested on implementing the application design into the actual application code, and you should be able to write code that interacts with AWS services. So the either through APIs or through SDKs or even the command line interface. So if I look at a few questions from this domain, here we go. Here's the first one. You run an ad supported photo sharing website using Amazon S3 to serve photos to visitors of your website. At some point, you find out that other sites are linking to the photos on your site, causing loss to your business. What is the effective method to mitigate this problem? So, if I look at the keywords in this particular question, right? What are the keywords? You are running a photo sharing website running on Amazon S3, and other sites are able to link to your photos and use those photos. You want to stop them from using your photos. So what are the best ways to do that, right? What is the best way to do that? So if you look at the options given here, storing photos on an EBS volume of the web server might work, but it's not something that will scale, right? So that's not the correct answer. Okay, removing public read access and using pre-signed URLs with expiry dates for your images on S3. This looks like a valid option. What about so let's keep this for now. What about the third one? Use CloudFront distributions for static content. That's a good way to actually make your response times shorter, but that will not help you mitigating the problem being stated in the question, right? So that again is not the answer. Block the IPs of the offending websites in security groups. Not the answer again. So here, option B, removing public access from your S3 bucket and using pre-signed URLs is what will take care of the problem that's been specified in the question. Now here you can see clearly that it's a scenario based question, and unless you understand how security works in S3, how you can go ahead and give or block public access, how you can create pre-signed URLs, you will not be able to answer this question. So it's important to understand concepts and not just memorize things when you are preparing for the exam. Okay, here goes another one. You've written an application that uses a load balancer, elastic load balancer, to spread traffic to several web servers. Your users complain that they are sometimes forced to log in again in the middle of using your application. This is not how you expect your application to work. What is the possible solution to prevent this from happening? Now, we can see very clearly from the question that the basic keywords that we have to concentrate on here is your users complain that they are sometimes forced to log in again. Basically, problem with session management, right? So how do you take care of that? Use instance memory to save the session state. Okay, maybe. Use instance storage to save the session state. Will not be fast enough. Using EBS to save the session state, not really. So when it comes to saving session states for web applications, the two recommendations that AWS has is either using Elasticache or using DynamoDB, because these are the services which will give you the speed at which sessions need to be written and retrieved from storage. Right. So this is going to be the answer for this question. I hope you're all enjoying trying to answer these questions with me, and it's giving you some idea of how to look at a question during the exam and how to arrive at the correct answer. So domain 4 talks about refactoring. These are the certification objectives. Optimize the application to best use the features of AWS and migrate the existing application code to run on AWS. So here goes your first question. Which services can assist with refactoring a solution to be more cost-saving option to an existing on-premises hosted application? So you have an on-premises hosted application, you want to be able to come up with a cost-saving solution now, right? So you have to choose three answers here. There are four options given. So we know that eliminating the wrong one is going to be the easier option here. So here you can see using the AWS application discovery service to launch your application is not going to be the answer here. It's not going to save you any cost. So that doesn't look like a good answer to the question being asked, right? So the other three options, that is hosting a static website on S3, EC2 instances to run the application, along with using a managed service like RDS to run the database, and using Lambda functions and DynamoDB for data, is what would be a cost-saving option for your on-premises applications, which are now moving to the cloud. Okay, here is another one. Which Amazon service can be used for caching? Okay, there are two answers to be chosen. Which are the ones? S3 is not a service for caching, we know that. Similarly, Elasticsearch is also not a service for caching. So the two services that are used for caching, for web caching and content delivery, we use CloudFront, and to cache application data, we use Elasticache. Okay, domain 5 in the developer exam is about monitoring and troubleshooting. So let us go through a couple of questions in this domain. So again, the certification objectives for this domain would include writing code that can be monitored and performing root cause analysis on faults found in testing or production. So here goes the question. Your application is trying to upload a 6 GB file to Amazon S3, and it receives a message that your proposed upload exceeds the maximum allowed object size. What is a possible solution to this problem? So if you look at the keywords in this particular question, you need to pay attention to the fact that you're actually trying to upload a 6 GB file, and you're getting a message which says that your upload exceeds the maximum allowed object size, right? So keeping these things in mind, you have to now go and choose the correct options from answer from the options given. So the first option says that none of the options are correct. S3 objects are limited to 5 GB, which is not at all correct. The maximum size of an object that can be stored on S3 is actually 5 TB. So that's not the correct answer. Use a multi-part upload API for this object. Okay, this may be an answer, so let's just keep this aside. Use the large object upload API for this object. No. Upload to a different region doesn't make any sense at all. Contact support to increase your object size limit, not really. It's not going to work. So the first thing in this question that you need to know is that the maximum size of the object that S3 can store is not 5 GB but 5 TB. However, in a single put operation, you are allowed to upload a maximum of 5 GB. Here, your file size is 6 GB. So in this case, you have to use the multi-part upload API, right? Okay. Here's another one. What happens by default when one of the resources in an AWS CloudFormation stack cannot be created? Now, to answer this question, you need to know the default behavior of CloudFormation whenever there is an error in stack creation, right? So whenever there is an error in stack creation, the default behavior is to roll back the entire stack, right? So keeping that in mind, we are going to answer, right? We are going to answer this question. So what happens? Previously created resources are kept, but the stack creation is terminated. No, that is not the answer. As I told you, the entire stack is rolled back actually, right? So option B says previously created resources are deleted and the stack creation is terminated. This looks like the correct option. What about option C? The stack creation continues and the final results indicate which steps failed. That's not the default behavior of CloudWatch. Option D says cloud formation, I'm sorry. Option D says CloudFormation templates are parsed in advance so that stack creation is guaranteed to succeed. That is also not correct. So here, the correct option is going to be option B. All the resources which have been created previously are again going to be deleted and the entire stack creation is going to be terminated. So you need to know that the default behavior is to roll back the entire stack. So I hope you had some fun trying to answer those questions. Now, many of you who are already associate level certified would say that, sorry, yeah, Deepika, that was too simple to answer and we already knew all the answers. They were pretty simple questions. So let me just make it a little more challenging for you. We're going to talk about the DevOps Engineer Professional Exam now. This is a professional level exam. And as I told you, these exams are a little tough to crack because they not only test you on the breadth of services, they also test you on the depth of the knowledge that you have on these services, right? So if I talk about a professional exam, it could be DevOps engineering, it could be solutions architect professional. They are professional exams. The duration is going to be around 180 minutes to complete around 75 questions. Again, these are multiple choice or multiple response kind of questions. The cost of these exams comes to around 300 US dollars, and the practice exam for these the professional level exam costs around 40 USD, right? Again, you can walk into a Pearson VUE and PSI testing center, or you can take these exams at your home remotely proctored, right? So again, similar to the developer associate exam, there are multiple domains that you will be tested on in the DevOps engineering exam also. So these are the domains: SDLC automation, configuration management and infrastructure, monitoring and logging, policies and standards automation, incident and event response, high availability, fault tolerance, and disaster recovery, right? Like developer exam, here also each of these domains has a certain weightage in the exam. Okay, here is a sample question from the professional exam, and looking at the question itself, you can make out that this is not going to be very easy, right? The questions are going to be long ones here, and each of the option is going to be long too. And what is challenging here is that many a times you will have options that are very close, and you will have more than one options that are very close. You will have more than one options that look correct, and then you are supposed to choose the best option based on the keywords and the specifics that have been stated in the question. So that becomes quite challenging in the professional level exam. So let us go through some of the sample questions, a few, and see how it goes. And here I am not going through it domain wise, because that's not how you're going to get the questions in the exam, right? So the exam doesn't tell you which domain a particular question belongs to. You just have the question, you go ahead and answer it, right? So here is the question. A new developer is struggling with creating a buildspec.yaml file. Now, I'm assuming that at least a few of you would be familiar with a few DevOps services on AWS. And we know that if we want to automate our builds on AWS, we can use a service called Code Build. And we tell Code Build what to do during a build using a buildspec.yaml file, right? So there is a new developer in your organization who's struggling with writing this buildspec.yaml file. So the developer is struggling to create a buildspec.yaml file to create a Docker image using Code Build. The developer needs to log into Amazon ECR. ECR is our container registry. So he needs to log into ECR and set the repository URI in the pre-build stage, but the developer is unsure of the options for the build and post-build stage. So in the pre-build stage, you log into ECR. What do you do in the build and post-build stage? That is something that we are struggling with right now. So the question is asking you, how should the developer configure the build and post-build stages in the buildspec.yaml file? Right, so these are the keywords in this question. And now if you look at the options here, they look very similar to each other, right? If you look at them at a glance, they are very, very similar to each other, which means that you need to read the question properly, and you need to actually read all the options word by word properly before you go ahead and answer this question. And that is exactly why I was telling you in the beginning that you should definitely keep track of time when you are appearing for a professional exam specifically, because it's very easy to lose track of time in the pro exams, right? So let's go through the first option. So the first option says, in the build stage, build the Docker image with this particular command, right? So where the repository URI is being set using a environment variable. In the post build stage, sorry, push the image to the ECR repository, that is our container registry, with the Docker push command, right? Specifying the image tag. Okay, this kind of looks okay. Let's go to the next option. Build stage, log into ECR. Post build stage, push the image to ECR. Now, build, post build. So where did we build the image? So this option doesn't look right. The step to build the image is actually not given here. What about option C? In the build stage, nothing needs to be done. Build stage starts automatically after the ECR during pre-build stage, not really. So option C also doesn't look right. What about option D? In the build stage, build the Docker image with the Docker push command, and in the post build stage, push the image using Docker push command. Now if you see, option A and option D look very similar, but if you actually pay attention to the options here, you will see there is a difference here. So option A in the build stage is actually building the image, whereas here it's again a push, right? So even though they look very similar, only when you read it word by word do you realize that B, C, D are wrong and option A is the correct answer, right? Here's another one. You've been asked to update resources in an AWS CloudFormation stack. Upon attempting to perform the update fails And on rolling back the change, the stack enters a update rollback failed state. What is the likely cause of the rollback failing? So you were trying to update resources using a CloudFormation template. However, when you tried to do the update, uh, there was something that failed. The update fails, and when CloudFormation tries to roll back the stack, even the rollback fails. What could be the reason? So if you look at the options here, option A says the update caused new auto scaling groups to be created that cannot be rolled back. That is not a correct answer. What about option B? The update caused an empty S3 bucket to be created that cannot be rolled back. This again is not correct. As far as the bucket is empty, it can definitely be deleted. The stack's resources have been changed outside of AWS CloudFormation. So probably somebody went to the logged in to the console and made changes to the resources which actually belong to the CloudFormation stack. This looks like a plausible reason. What about option D? The stack's resources are part of an auto scaling group that has scaled down. Doesn't make sense again. So the correct option for this question is going to be option C. Here's another one for you. Your company's website, which has auto scaling enabled, is experiencing higher response times during peak hours, right? How can you edit the auto scaling policy to reduce the response time? So if you look at the keywords again, you have response times during peak hours that are higher than anticipated. You have to edit the auto scaling policy to reduce the response time. So again, if you look at the options here, option A says public custom CloudWatch metrics for CPU and bandwidth. The question doesn't talk about CPU or bandwidth being a bottleneck, right? So that doesn't look like a correct option. B, increase the maximum number of servers in the auto scaling group. This looks like a possible answer because more the servers, more requests can be served and response times can go lowered. Option C says write a script that monitors the CPU load and uses Amazon SQS. Again, not required, right? Option D, publish a custom CloudWatch metric for the number of concurrent requests and have auto scaling use its alarm. Okay, this also looks like a good answer to have. So let's keep this also aside. Enable detailed monitoring to enable sub-minute granularity in metrics. Again, this is not going to help us in any way. So we had to choose two options. Option B and option D are the correct answers for this particular question. Here's another one. Your AWS account administrator left your company today. The administrator had access to the root user and a personal IAM administrator account. With these accounts, the administrator generated other IAM users and keys. Which of the following should you do today to protect your AWS infrastructure? So there is an employee who is leaving your company. The employee was your administrator, AWS administrator, who had an AWS account himself and who had access to other users' credentials and keys too. So how should, once he leaves the company, how should you be securing your account, right? So look at the options. This administrator had root user access, right? So the first option says change the password and add MFA to the root user. Makes sense. Put an IP restriction on root user logins. Cannot be done. That's not possible. So this is not an option. Rotate keys and change passwords for IAM users. Okay, this makes sense because the administrator who left had access to the other users' credentials. So C makes sense. D, delete all IAM users. Not at all required. E, delete the administrator's IAM user. Yes, that should be done. That looks like a good option. F, relaunch all Amazon EC2 instances with new roles. Not required because the credentials which are created by roles are anyways temporary. So the correct options here would be A, C, and E. I hope all of you are having fun trying to answer these questions, and you actually saw the difference in the way you were being asked questions in an associate level exam and the level of questions that you get in the professional level exam, right? So the professional level exams test you on a lot of services. On, again, the breadth is also more, and the depth of knowledge that is required to answer those questions is also more. And many a times you will have questions and answers which will involve two or more services, a combination of services to make a solution work. So it's very important to understand the concepts related to the service usages, where to use which service, where does the service fit in, what are the pros, what are the cons, and what are the best practices, most importantly, right? Now, having gone through these sample questions, some of them might have been very easy for you if you've already cleared an exam. Some of them might have been a little tricky. How do you go about preparing for these exams? Now, what are the resources available? So, if we talk about the resources that are available for your AWS certification, you have the aws.amazon.com/certification website. This is where you will find your exam guides, which detail out the entire all the details of the exam, all the domains that are covered, what you are expected to know in each domain, the weightage that each domain carries, what are the kind of questions, details about the questions that will be asked in the exam, what services should you be going through, right? All those details are available in the exam guide. And you also have sample questions, some 10 sample questions that are freely available to you on the website. The website also gives you pointers to the white papers and FAQs that you should definitely go through before you attempt an exam, right? So there are a lot of concepts that will become clearer to you when you go through these white papers and FAQs. Then, of course, when you are reading through something, when you're trying to understand a concept and you have questions, you have doubts, the best place to refer to is the documentation. So go through the AWS documentation, and you can look at multiple reference architectures to see how services interact with each other, right? And of course, you should definitely take a practice exam before you actually schedule your actual exam. The practice exams are excellent at telling you how prepared you are to actually appear for the exam. So if I had to show you the certification website, this is the certification website, aws.amazon.com/certification. And you can see it gives you all the details about different certifications. If, let's say, I want to know more about the developer certificate, so I click on this, and here I get more details about the developer associate certification. It gives me details about the exam. I have an option to schedule my exam. It tells me who should be taking this exam. And this is where I can download the exam guide and the sample questions. So if I look at the exam guide, as I was telling you, it tells you a lot of details about this exam, right? So what kind of content is covered, what are the domains, the weightage, what are you expected to know for each domain, all that is covered. And many a times I have had multiple participants in my class who asked me, okay, Deepika, can you tell me what are the services I should be concentrating on for the developer exam, and which are the services that I don't need to really get deep into? You do have that also answered in the exam guide, right? So it gives you a list of services that you should definitely know, and a list of services which might be out of scope for this particular exam. So it's a good idea to download this exam guide and look at it every day when you are preparing for the exam, actually. So this is the exam guide. You also can have a look at the sample questions like I was telling you. So you have some sample questions available along with the answers. So once you are 80%,
Because,
80%,
sorry to interrupt there, are you sharing the exam guide? Because we are just still seeing your PPT.
oh, is it? I am
Yeah.
so sorry. Um, okay, so I'll just stop sharing for a second and share it
Sure.
again. Okay, can you see
Yep, it's showing up now.
the exam guide now?
Yes.
Okay. So like I was telling you, this is the exam guide. I'm so sorry. I think I was sharing the PowerPoint application and not the actual screen. Yeah, so here you can see this is the exam guide. It tells you all the details about the exam and the domains that are covered in the exam, what you should be knowing about each of the domains, right? And as I was telling you, one of the most common questions that I get is, okay, which services should I concentrate on for the developer exam? Which services should I pay more attention to for the DevOps exam? And so on. So the appendix actually has that list also, right? So what services you should know about and what are the services which might be out of scope for this particular developer exam. So here you come to AWS so I just navigated to aws.amazon.com/certification. I have my certifications listed. I clicked on the developer associate certification, and here is where I get all the details, the exam guide as well as the sample questions. So this is the exam guide and these are the sample questions. So it's a very good idea to go through these. Apart from these, you also have a lot of resources listed here, right? So there are digital trainings available, there are white papers that are listed here, there are service FAQs that are listed here that you should definitely go through before the exam. So you have a similar page available for the DevOps engineering exam also. Apart from these resources, we also have a developer hub specifically created for from by the training and certification team, which actually gives you a complete learning path which will help you getting started with the exam preparation journey, right? So there is a step by step learning path which basically tries and gives you the basics that you need to know in order to dive deeper and actually go ahead and clear the developer certification exam. So it's a very simple to use and very comprehensive it's a very comprehensive uh, page that you can use when you are trying to prepare for your developer certification exam. So in the end you have the details that you require to actually give the exam also, right? So you have these. Those of you who like to have some hands-on, who have a very hands-on style of learning, can also go to awsworkshop.io, and you have n number of workshops available. So if you have access to an AWS account or you have a free trial AWS account created, go ahead and try out the workshops that are of interest to you here, right? So there are multiple options that are available. Okay, I think I have to share my PowerPoint again, and let me see if I can share my PowerPoint again. Just give me 1 second. I am just trying to share my PowerPoint screen again. Here you go. So I just told you about the certification website and the TNC Developer Hub. Vaishnavi, I've pasted these links in the chat. Faisal, Vaishnavi, if one of you could please post it for our users, for our viewers also, that would be great.
Sure, Deepika. I saw your link. We'll ask our moderators to post it on the comments
Thank
section.
you. Thanks
All
a
right.
lot. Thank you, Vaishnavi. Thank you. So, what should be your next steps now? So, we currently are giving away free practice exam vouchers for the Dev Associate exam and the DevOps Professional exam. Vaishnavi is kind enough to post the links for you in the chat. Please go ahead, use these links, get your free practice exam voucher, and you can take a practice exam, and then you can go ahead and actually be confident enough to give the actual exam, right? The practice exams are very good at telling you how prepared you are, where the gaps are, and how do you fill those gaps, right? You also have a certification ebook which gives you all the details for different certifications that AWS has to offer. So if you want to take a look at this certification ebook, you are welcome to do that also. So but we are going to paste those links for you, and you can go ahead and use these links to get a free practice exam voucher. So that was the end of what I wanted to tell you about AWS certifications in general, and in particular about the developer and the DevOps certification. I hope all this information was useful to you and you actually enjoyed the session. With that, I would like to close it here. And if you have any questions, I am more than happy to answer them.
All right. Thank you so much, Deepika. That was a wonderful, wonderful session. I mean, I was engaged till the end, and I'm sure all of our users were as well, because I've seen so many comments about every question you posted. They're posting answers to that. Wonderful session. All right. So, moving forth to questions, I saw a couple of questions regarding um, your session. I think the moderators will be posting them on to the screen. Let me just go through it once. Just give me a minute, please.
Okay, I can see a question asking me, what about the surprise? So the surprise was the free practice exams that we've given you. So if you stayed till the end of the session, you got the links to the free practice exams, which would have otherwise costed you $20 or $40, depending on whether you're taking an associate exam or a professional exam.
All right, we've also shared the link that you asked us to in the comments section. I think anyone who's missed the links, we'd request you to please go back to the comments section, the chat. Our moderators have posted the link. All right, so just another moment, please, Deepika.
Yes, please.
I think, all right, so I don't think we are sharing this questions on the screen, but I could do one thing for our audience. We can ask you the questions offline, and you could, if please, be kind enough to answer them for our audience. Is that all right with you?
Absolutely, absolutely. No problems at all.
All right, that's great. I still see a lot of people thanking you for valuable information by Deepika ma'am. That's great, letting you know. All right, thank you so much, Deepika, for your time and efforts here today.
Thank you so much, Vaishnavi. I really enjoyed speaking here today, and I'm so happy to see that it was of value to all the viewers who viewed the session. Thank you so much.
Build, 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 build. Go, go, build, 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 go, 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 build, go 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 build. There is no compression algorithm for experience. Def and test, def and test, def and test are the most important workloads. Dance like nobody's watching. Dance like nobody's watching. Dance like nobody's watching. Dance like nobody's watching.